Creating Creatures, Sketching and Concept Development with Brynn Metheney. Brynn Metheney. Can't wait for this one. Yeah, it's going to be cool. Oh, I forgot I was recording. Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com and this is episode 118 of the So Free Art podcast, which is a little podcast that I do about the art and things. And this one is about the arty things, because we're going to be looking at another article, a little Art-Ickle, an Ickle article. And this one's going to be from issue number 2 of the Graphite Magazine, which is a beautiful little magazine. And the article we're going to be looking at is called Creating Creatures, and it says it's Creating Creatures, Sketching and Concept Development with Brynn Metheney, little artist Brynn Metheney. So I'll talk about that in a minute, but the co-host lilDENNiS is with us. He's excited for this. He was excited because this was going to be an episode a few weeks ago, but ended up talking about acceptance instead. So I can't wait for this one. It's a really fun little article, and I went through the notes last night again to do a little recap, and I almost enjoyed reading the article for the second time more than the first one. It's cool. So I hope you enjoy this one. Before we get into the episode though, got a few little things. What is it here? Oh yeah, I'm still working on the website at sophielawson.com and what have I done? Currently working on photos, modelling photos. It's quite funny. Just sorting out my little photos, and what I'm going to do is, little Sophie, my little character, she's going to be critiquing my photos. So it's going to be quite fun. There's going to be a little bit of humour in there, hopefully. So I'm excited for that. That's what I'm working on at the moment. It's taking quite a long time because I got thousands of photos. It's quite hard to sort through photos. And then what else is... Oh yeah, this week I also picked up a Wacom Cintiq. It was a 21-inch one. It was quite big. So that was taking up quite a lot of time. And what it's done is it's actually affected my meditation, because I was sorting out the computer and stuff instead of doing what... Blabbering. Yeah. lilDENNiS has said I am blabbering, so... Let's get into this little episode. You can find show notes and everything at sophielawson.com, because I'll put a link to little Brynn's website and a few other bits and bobs. And also you can watch this as a video on YouTube at youtube.com/sophielawson. And what I do is, if you watch it on the video, you'll be able to see the images in the little article. It's going to be really fun, this. So let's get into this little article. It's, what's it called? Creating Creatures with Brynn Metheney. So let's get into this little article then. It's from issue number 2 of the Graphite Magazine, which is a beautiful bunch of magazines. They only released 10 of these, and they're by 3D Total Publishing. And if you actually go onto their website at the moment, I'll put a link in the description. But all these Graphite magazines, the ones they've still got in stock, they're all on sale for £3. And I feel like once they've gone, they're actually going to be gone forever. So I would recommend getting these, because these magazines are just so much fun. They're fun to look at, but also fun to read. Because as I've started going into the articles, I'm really learning a lot. So I recommend these. But this little article is called Creating Creatures, Sketching and Concept Development with the artist Brynn Metheney. And I actually had to go onto YouTube to see how to pronounce their name. You spell it, it's Brynn, and then it's Metheney. But if you go onto their little website, which their website is brynnart.com, BRYNNART.com. Did you hear the voice there? It went weird. I think I need a drink. I'm going to have a bit of hot chocolate. But if you go onto their website, they've got loads of beautiful, well, they're doing loads of little creatures and beautiful creatures, lots of sketches and lots of finished art of creatures. But if you go onto they got a little store on their site as well. They've got a load of art books full of their sketches. So I'm so tempted to pick up some of those books. Because one of the things I loved about this article was their little drawings. Their drawings are so fun. They've got lots of like feeling about them, character, but they're also just pleasing, I suppose. Really pleasing and interesting. So this little article is broken into 9 main sections, and the sections we got is materials, fundamentals of creature design, warm up, sketch, observe and study, exploring shapes. And that word exploring is like, it's a big word for this article, because as I got into it I realised a lot of this article, it was all about exploring. Every stage of this is about exploring really, which is cool. Then we've also got layering with vellum, which I think is just like it's a form of tracing paper. I think it's a posh, fancy word for tracing paper. We've also got finding features, building up the drawing, and then we've got the final sketch. So this article, it goes from nothing, like a blank canvas, right to a finished sketch. And the sketch, I would say, is more of like at the point where you would just start to ink it, really. So it's cool. It doesn't go right to the end of a drawing. It's all about sketching this and getting your ideas down. So the main takeaways I got from this article, well, I loved this. The main takeaway I got really was it's all about exploring. Every stage of this article is about exploring, which I loved that. And I was getting so many ideas and tips and stuff reading this one. But I've put here ways to take risks without too much risk. Again, it's beautiful. It's a way of forcing yourself out of your comfort zone, but almost having like little, I suppose, safety nets. So there's certain ways is like he uses. I keep saying he. I don't think the name Brynn is a he. BRYNN. What it is it's because I keep looking at that name and seeing the name Brian. So, but this artist, they use this tracing paper, this vellum, and they use it as layers. I'll talk about it more as we get into the article. But using that tracing paper as layers and scanning your work into the computer before committing, it's ways that you can sort of allow yourself to take risks, but you know that you can always fall back on things. So I love that, because again, if you can take risks, it's going to help you explore. So I think that's cool. But it's about risks mentally as well, because they say about how they use ink instead of pencils, because by using ink it helps you let go, because you know that you can't erase it. So I've put here, you will not worry about the risks. And I've put here, because I was thinking about this yesterday, I thought if you can erase, it's too easy to erase something that isn't 100% right. But you might do a little sketch and you look at it and think, I don't like that, so you erase it, and you never know, but you might have missed a treat there, because if you had been using ink, you don't know, but that little sketch that didn't look very good and you've erased it, if you had just played with it a bit more, it might have turned into something really beautiful. So I like that. By using this ink, you're potentially going to find more exciting things. So that was cool. I've also put here the importance of studying and reference, which I think that is key. I've put a mixing of imagination and real. So you're you're using things from your imagination, but you're also keeping it real. And as we get into the article, they talk about mixing creatures, which is something they talked about in one of the other articles, taking different characters, like say taking a dog and a bird and trying to create a creature out of those two together. So I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. Mixing traditional and digital, which I think is cool. Sketching and drawing on paper, colours on the PC. Yeah, I like that. I've put here, I love the effect of coloured gesture sketches underneath the art. I love it. I love it when you can see the colour of a sketch underneath the finished drawing. It just looks really cool. And I also just love when artists sketch in coloured pencils. It just feels really, it makes me, like I said, it makes me feel happy seeing little coloured sketches. I put here is an article full of little tips, which is cool. I put again the importance of not the actual drawing but studying and sketching. So this goes into some of the other articles. A lot of the articles lately, I've just been observing all the artists are saying a lot of the process is not actually drawing, it's the things you're not doing when you're drawing. So like, what was it I put here? Last week, get out in the woods. Well, this was the last article, which was about fairies. It's talking about the importance of getting out with the nature, because then you put yourself in nature. When you sit down to do your drawings a day later or something, all that nature that you've been surrounded by is going to come into your art. So on this one, it's about studying and sketching animals. So before you're even doing your drawing, like study the animals, so you've got an understanding of them. This is what goes back into mixing real and imagination. And I put it here, in a way, the drawing process never stops. I thought that was quite cool. And I've put here, I enjoyed this, and I love their sketches. There's lots of motion, fullness, and character in their sketches. So let's get into this little article. I've got loads of notes for this one. It was such a fun article. So I'll just read the little intro bit so you get an idea of what the article's about. It says, using a variety of pencils and papers, Brynn Metheney covers how to invent a creature concept using animal research, anatomy studies, and rapid sketch techniques. This article, Art-Ickle, will cover how to build up forms and combine characteristics to make a new and interesting life form. How fun does that sound? So we start out with tools, talking about the materials really, and it's all traditional stuff apart from a little stylus for, looks like a Wacom tablet, a Wacom Cintiq or something. So the whole process is basically traditional, but there's a little bit of digital mixed in, which I think that's what I'm going to do in the future. Because I feel like what I'm going to be doing, I think, is I'm going to work traditional all the way to the point where it gets to colouring, and I think that's when I'll go digital. But this first bit, what did I put here? I've put my little notes that I got was use what you enjoy using. I like that because they give you a bunch of tools. There's some tools in here I've never heard of, but they give you a bunch of tools, but really what they're saying is use what you enjoy using. And I said colour underlaying sketch, dark pencils on top, and I'll do that with my little Sophies, but I haven't made it a habit. So again, what you do is you do the sketches in a colour, and then when you're happy with the sketch, you then go over the top of it dark with your normal pencils, like to really make the finished sketch pop. It says by using pencils you can't erase. You'll let go of doing it right, which I thought was a cool little tip. Again, this goes into that same thing as the ink. It's a way of forcing yourself to take risks, because again, if you can erase, it's too tempting to erase. and you might miss on something. You might miss something beautiful. They also talk about China markers called grease pencils. I think they're great for bold mark making. They are large waxy pencils and they're almost impossible to erase. So I was thinking about looking into those little China markers. And then I've got same with the paper. Use cheap paper at the start and it will force you to let go more. Well, it will help you let go more easily. And I've noticed this with sketchbooks. If I've got a sketchbook, a really posh little sketchbook, I won't actually use it because I'm scared to use it. Whereas if I've got like a little cheap sketchbook, it's so much easier to. So what I do now is all my sketchbooks, I get them in a shop in town called The Works, really thick sketchbooks for £1. So I can do whatever I want in those. You can even rip the pages out if you want. So that has really helped me with my not being. Yeah, it's helped me let go really. So what I do is the posh fancy sketchbooks, I keep those for my little Sophies. So I thought that was again another nice little tip. And so what I'll put here, I'll put, so use shit paper and pencils you can't erase for the initial sketching to let go. Blue painter's tape. Oh yeah, they talk about this blue painter's tape, which you use for sticking tracing paper on top of your drawings. But I've actually found something called Scotch. It's called Scotch Magic Tape, and this stuff is amazing. You got the Scotch Magic Tape. It comes in two little flavours. There's a green one, which isn't actually reusable. It's just invisible, so you can write on top of it. But you want the blue one, Scotch Magic Tape. You want the blue one, and what you can do with this is, this stuff is incredible. You can basically stick it on anything. You can write on the top of it if you want, and then what you can do is you can peel it off, and then you can. To me, this is like the best tape in the world. You can keep reusing it. So this stuff, I love this stuff. Whenever I'm doing a realistic drawing, I've got loads of this stuck to my table. My table. What I do is I stick the paper down. So as I'm moving, because what you want to do is you want to stick your paper to the desk, especially when you're doing a realistic drawing, and then the paper's not going to move, but you might want to move the paper. So whereas before I started out using masking tape, that ended up ripping my paper. So that's when I found this stuff, and I love it. It's Scotch Magic Tape, and you want the blue one, which is reusable and invisible. So that was basically the first little bit. The next bit, what's the next bit? Fundamentals of creature design. Got a little quote at the top, and it says, when inventing creatures, it is imperative that you draw your animals as much as you can. So in other words, in order to be really good at inventing creatures, you've actually got to be drawing real life little animals. So the more you understand these real animals, the more you're going to be able to create really fun characters and creatures which are from your imagination, but they still look believable. I think that was this bit's really fun. So in my notes I've put, to create creatures you have to study, draw animals. So this is both inspirational, but it keeps your creature believable, like the forms and the anatomy. Later on they're talking about taking multiple creatures. So if you know what a dog's leg looks like, for instance, and say, well, like this one, a rhino's head. If you studied that, it means you could take the rhino's horn and plop it on another creature, and you would know how it's going to flow with the rest of it. So it's like what we can do is, the more you study these creatures in real life, the more you can start taking them apart and putting them on other creatures, and you'll just know if it will work and stuff. This is cool. I've put, uses drawings. What's that? Oh yeah. Uses drawings made from photos at previous zoo trips. And also, because they go to the zoo and they take photographs. So when they come, again, this goes into what they talked about in that fairy article. You're going to the zoo to have a nice day out, relaxing. Take some photos. So those photos are going to play into your art later on. So this is what made me feel like the drawing process never stops. Because even when you're not drawing, you can still be gathering stuff for later on, which I thought was cool. And then this is a little tip I liked. It says if you can't get to the zoo, for instance, just watch a nature program, pause it and sketch it. I used to do that with anime. Back when I first started drawing, I was watching anime every single morning. And what I'd do is because the thing with anime is, Japanese anime, they always create such amazing characters, but they have such cool, dynamic poses. So I'd see something and I'd think, I want to sketch that. So I'd just pause it and sketch it. But they're saying you can do that with nature programs as well, which I think is cool. Because what's better about that is you're going to actually see the animal in a natural environment and you'll be able to watch it moving. So not only are you going to be able to pause it and draw it and study it, but you can actually also watch it to see how it's moving. So I like that, I thought it was cool. And then I've put here, they like to pick different animals to keep creature interesting. So they picked a rhinoceros and an iguana for this little article, which I think is cool. So you've got two completely different creatures really, but what they do is they pull them together and they create a creature that you can sort of see bits of both in the final creature. So what I love about this is, because they've studied the creature so much, you look at it and you think, that actually looks real. You could imagine it existing in real life. But you look at it as well and you think, it looks really interesting and different. So they've managed to merge imagination with realistic, which I love that. It's really cool. So the next little bit is called the warm-up, and in the article what you'll notice is their warm-up is very, very messy. All they're doing is they're looking at whatever they want to draw. They're just getting their pen or their pencil, whatever, and they're just scribbling out the shape. And they're not even moving their pencil off the paper. Very, very scribbly. And you look at it and think, well, the fun thing is, even though they're all weird scribbles, you can actually see creatures in there. So you can kind of see the creature in the scribbles, which is quite cool. But they've put here, warm-up is the most crucial. It gets your drawing muscles ready for action. And again, because it's just scribbles, you're not going to be sitting there thinking, I've got to make this look perfect. It's not about that. Like they said, it's about just getting your hand moving. It's like stretching your muscles before a run or something. I like that. And then I've put, they use permanent ink or whatever, something permanent, probably like those China markers. It says they use something permanent so that they just go for it. There's no erasing involved here, and they're scribbling the creature's body. So they're not focusing on details, they're focusing on just the big shapes, the big bastard shapes, the big bastard basic shapes of the body. Fun. The next little bit is called Sketch, Observe and Study. And what I put here, oh yeah, this little thing here come to me from the first book I ever studied from, was called Keys to Drawing. That was an internal burp. Keys to Drawing by Bert Dodgson. And something I learnt was, you don't see something till you actually draw it. And as I was reading this little bit of the article, I remembered that. So to me, that is, because what happened was, one time I was doing a realistic pencil drawing of a lady. I can't remember who it was, but whoever it was, I'd been looking at them for I'd seen them for like years, and I thought I knew them. But as I sat down to draw them, I suddenly noticed that they had a tattoo, and I'd never noticed that tattoo. It was a little one. I never noticed that tattoo until I started drawing them. So until you actually try to draw something, you haven't really studied it, I don't think. So I feel like the best way to study something is to draw it. So which one's this? Number 4. You don't see something till you draw it. And then I've put, what's this bit say here? Don't just draw, but study their behaviour and psychology and physiology. How cool. So you're not just drawing them. Yeah, you're not just drawing them, you're studying their behaviour and their physiology. I like that. Physiology will create the shapes, but their behaviour is going to create the feeling. So yeah, if you know that this creature stomps about, when you go to start creating your own little character, you'll put it in a pose where it's stomping. So that's quite cool. We've got, by drawing lots of animals, you're exploring ideas and shapes for your creatures. Your creatures will come easier. Can't read my notes sometimes. By drawing lots of animals, it's like you're gathering research. You're exploring ideas and shapes for your own creatures. So yeah, the more you draw real animals, the more you're going to get an idea of the actual shapes. So when you're creating your own characters, these shapes, like shapes of animals, will just come to you much easier because you've been studying them a lot. Animals have surprising proportions. Again, I'll put a little note here. This goes into, again, Bert Dodgson. One of the things he said was, he kept saying this, and it's stuck in my head ever since. Bert Dodgson said, don't draw what you think, draw what you see. So again, animals have surprising proportions. If you draw an animal without studying it, you might think it's right, but when you actually study it, you'll realise the proportions are weird. And you won't notice that until you actually study it. And your best way to study it is to draw it. I like that. Small details are crucial. Your eyes don't see things till you draw it. Again, I've put here about that tattoo. It's like your eyes are filtering the world. So you might look at somebody, and they're wearing, they're wearing a pink outfit. They've got a little blue, no, that would pop. Let's say they're wearing a little pink outfit, and the bottom of their shoes has got a little, little pattern on it. You might not notice that pattern because it's not very important information. But when you study them, when you draw them, you'll notice a little pattern. So I like that. Small details. Your eyes don't see things till you draw it. But they put the small details are crucial. So if you look at their final little drawing, you can see like little claws. But what I liked was the little teeth that they've got coming. They've got little tooth coming out of the mouth, which is cool. Yeah, little things. It's one of my affirmations, that little things make life big or something. It's little things that make life big. Reference is important, I put. You need to draw animals before you can create them. Keeps repeating this because it's the importance of actually drawing real life. And then I put here, look, that thing about don't just draw but study their behaviour and psychology. I've put it will help create your story and your character. So again, I've put that in from one of these other articles. But when you're creating a character, it's all about the story and the character. So one of the ways to do that is to not just study their shapes, but to study their behaviour, and also I would say also how they interact with other animals, because that tells you a little story as well. The next bit of the article is called Exploring Shapes, and I've put, I like this. They don't know what they're going to draw. They just create till after the warm-up sketches. Yeah, they don't know what they're going to draw. So when they're going into the warm-up, they've got no idea what they're going to draw. But during the warm-up, something might come out of it, which they can take further into their drawings. So again, when they're doing this little warm-up bit, they're almost like just emptying their mind with these shapes, these random shapes. And then they'll look at the shape and think, oh, I like that shape. So then they can start exploring that shape, which I think is cool. Yeah, what I put here is their sketches inspire themselves. That's cool. So the little shapes that they're doing in the warm-up it's actually inspiring them to create the shape for the actual character. It's quite amazing. This goes into that thing where I feel like we are connected to something else. Like, let's just say a higher self or something. So this warm-up sketch, you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're just letting your hand and your pencil draw whatever you want. So I feel like you're connecting with something greater than yourself, really. So that creates the shape, and then you bring your mind back in to start trying to turn those random shapes into actual things. It explores the silhouettes. I put keeps it simple. A 3/4 composition, so no perspective. Again, I love this because what they don't want to do is they don't want to confuse themselves by trying to do everything all at once. So what they do is they say, right, there's not going to be any perspective going on here. All I'm focusing on is the shapes and the feeling of the character, not about the perspective, which I think is cool. And what's this say here? As they sketch, they think about the creature's story. Yeah, how large? Is it male, female? And I've put here, is it transgender? But I like that as well, because again, they're being mindful of the story and the character. So it's not just about the shapes. It's not just about what you're drawing. It's about, I suppose, like why you're drawing it, but you're also thinking about the story. I like this. It's really cool. The next little bit was called Layering with Vellum. And this vellum is basically tracing paper. There's a little quote here, and it says, I am careful about pressure as I go. I want to make sure the features I really like are bold and the underlying construction lines are light. This is one of the things I struggle with. When I'm sketching, I tend to go too dark with my little sketches. I find it very hard to sketch lightly. So what happens is, like they said, when you want to try to make something pop, it's much harder because you've already gone too dark. So I like that. Something I've got to learn that. And I said they stop sketching when they get a silhouette that they like. They're keeping their design balanced. So they're thinking about what parts of each animal are they going to use, because they need the animal to look believable, and balanced. Uses vellum, which is tracing paper, to find details, design details and shapes. And I like this bit. This little quote they said, remember, form follows function. Yeah, so you might have an interesting shape, but it's got to have a function as well. Function. Form follows function. I like that. And it says, if a creature has wings, why does it have wings? Only have something on a creature that makes sense. So again, you're playing by doing things like putting wings on stuff, but you've also got to think, should this really be here? So there's this balance between being creative but also keeping it real, which I like that. You're creating from imagination but keeping it real and believable. And I've put here, it goes back to studying the animals to build up your understanding, but then I've put, but you can still play and make things up. I like that. I was going to say something really important. What was it? The tracing paper. What they do with this tracing paper, it's almost like they're working digitally, but traditionally. So what they do is they do their little sketch. They do their initial sketch. This is going to be quite funny. They do their initial sketch. They then get a piece of tracing paper, put it over the top, and they basically start building up the design of the creature on top of that initial sketch. So what happens is, let's say they've got a piece of tracing paper, they start building out a design and they think, I don't like that one. They can actually take it off and they've still got their initial sketch underneath. And this to me felt just like working digitally, because on the computer, you do your little gesture drawing, you then make a new layer so you can play around with different designs on top of it, but you've always still got your initial layer. So again, it's like you're taking risks, because you can, if you was doing the drawing, the sketch on top of your gesture, and you made a mistake, yeah, you'd lose this. You would lose the initial gesture. So I like this. It's a way of, again, being able to play and explore, but you've still got the initial, like the exciting bit, the gesture, the bit that you like. But what they also do, which I think is amazing, they actually put multiple bits of tracing paper on top of each other. So it's not just one. They might do a little drawing and they think, oh, I like this one, but then they put another piece of tracing paper on with a different coloured pencil. They start adding. They'll try a different one, but it will be based off the one they just did. So it's like they're sort of building up a creature over these multiple layers, but the good thing is they can always revert back to a previous phase of it. I think this is amazing. Not only have I never ever done this, I've never heard of anyone doing this before. It just seems like a genius way of playing around with design ideas, really. Because if you think about it, you might have a gesture that you love, and what you could do is you could just sit there and say, I'm going to create 20 different characters based off this one gesture. So you'd have like 20 sheets of tracing paper, each with a different design on it, and then you could look and say, oh, I like this one. Again, you can even start going to a point where you combine your designs. It's amazing. Another little tip, they use blunt pencils for the big bastard basic shapes, because that helps you not focus on the details. If you've got a blunt pencil, you can't go in there and start doing these little details. So again, I love that as well. They start simple and then go to the details. So when you get to the details later, that's when you start bringing in your sharp pencils and stuff. Again, it's a way of forcing yourself. Yeah, it's a way of forcing yourself to keep it simple. The next little bit is called Finding Features. And I'll put here colour erase pencils. Draw lightly and build up the drawing. Yeah, so they've got multiple layers here, multiple bits of tracing paper, or that is called vellum. Colour 1. So what they do is they don't just have 2 sheets of paper. They also have a different coloured pencil on each sheet. Because what that means is, if you look at the drawing they're doing, you can see the different colour underneath. So it's just really cool. It's like you can see the red underneath the blue layer, which I think is cool. So the red one is the body plan, and then the next one is putting the features. So what they're doing is the first layer of that tracing paper is like your big bastard shapes, but with a bit of detail. And then if they like it, they then put another layer on top, different coloured pencil, and they start adding more details. Beautiful. Again, it's like a digital process. It's like working on a computer. I think this is cool. Draw lightly and build up the drawing. Use darker colour to pull out key features. And they talk about pushing harder to make things pop. And I've put here, it's like a drawing version of sculpting, building up the shapes and the details. Vellum, the tracing paper, means you can always revert back, so it's a good way of experimenting your ideas. And I've put here, it's like layers on a computer. And then I've put pressure. Only make features you like bold. The construction is light. So on their little drawing, what you can see is parts of it are dark. Parts of it are dark, and then there's lots of it that's light. So it's cool, that. I think that's what gives the creature this form. It's the fact that they're focusing on the bits they want darker. It makes it look like a really thick creature, I suppose. Pressure, painter's tape. It says it stops the tracing paper getting crumpled when you're erasing. And what I've put here, I've put get your sausage out. You can make your lines lighter by getting your sausage out, which is a little tip I learnt from Jake Parker. What you do is, when you're doing your sketching, if you don't, because I have to do this, because I sketch too dark, what I have to do is, once I'm like happy with it, I'll get my kneaded eraser, put it into a sausage, and then you roll it over the top of your sketch, and you can actually make it lighter. So that's the way I've had to do it at the moment, and it works quite cool. What's the next bit here? We're on to the final page now, the final bit. So this one's called Building Up the Drawing. Building Up the Drawing. Oh, I like this as well. Scans it into the computer for a backup. So again, this is why I love this article. It's giving me lots of tips on how to be able to explore safely, take risks safely. So the multiple layers of tracing paper means you can really play with your design ideas, and if you don't like something, you can just go back. You can go back a step, but also by scanning, let's say you get your design on your tracing paper and you like it, you can then scan that into the computer, so you've now got a backup of that as well. So when you start drawing on top of your design with your final pencil, that's when you make stuff pop. You're going dark then, so you're sort of committing to the lines at that point, but you can commit safely knowing that you've got a backup on the computer. So I love that. I think it's really cool. Number 8, I've also put light to dark. Yeah, captures the volume and the textures. I like that. And then I've put, they draw over the top of their colour erase drawing. Yeah, but so they actually draw over the top of their design that they like, but they did say that you could actually use another piece of tracing paper. So if you really wanted to, you could. Oh, I love this. It's really cool. I really like this article. I've come away from it with full of so many ideas. And then the final bit of the article is the final sketch. And the final sketch, as I said before, it looks like a real creature, but you can also see it isn't. It looks like a dinosaur. It looks like something that would have existed thousands of years ago, millions of years ago. It looks really cool. It looks really like fat and full and heavy. You can feel the heaviness of it. But what I've put here is, even at this final bit when they're putting the final sketch together, they're still editing their design. So even at the end, they're still exploring. This whole thing was about exploring. You're exploring before you even do any drawing. by actually physically exploring the world, like in the zoo. You're taking photos and then you're exploring these characters by studying them. You're then scribbling on pieces of paper to explore shapes. You're then turning those shapes into more advanced shapes with a bit more detail. Again, you're exploring your shapes, and then you start exploring your designs with these different sheets of paper. And then at the final bit, you're still exploring like features and stuff. I think it's really cool. Another little tip: left to right to avoid smudging. Thinking about the light source. So they're now starting to think about the light source and actual details like that. And then at the end here it says, finally you can scan it into Photoshop and start adding your colours, etc. I think that's cool. And I will say this artist has got lovely nails. Lovely long nails. Nice. They're not super long, they're just very nicely well looked after nails. So I do believe that Brynn is a female, but I'm not sure. But well, for me this was a really fun little article, and lilDENNiS enjoyed it. He enjoyed this one. What I would love to do is take two of my puppets, like lilDENNiS, and let's say Peter the Penguin, and start bringing them together. That'd be quite fun. I'd enjoy that, I think. But I hope you enjoyed this little article. It was a look at, what's it called? I've forgotten the name of it. Creating Creatures, Sketching and Concept Design with Brynn Metheney. I hope you enjoyed that. I had so much fun with that one. It's really fun going through these articles on the podcast, because it's amazing how much you learn the second time. So as you're going through your notes, you're almost learning just as much as you do the first time. It's really fun. But I hope you enjoyed that, and I definitely recommend checking out Brynn's little website. It's beautiful, it is, and he's got little books on there and stuff, like to talked about before. So I definitely recommend that. You can find show notes and everything at sophielawson.com. And you can also find this as a video on YouTube at youtube.com/sophielawson. But that's basically it. All that's left is this week's little inspirational quote. And it actually goes to the artist Brynn from this article. I absolutely love this quote. So the inspirational quote this week is, "It can be useful to look back at those warm-up scribbles. There might be ideas hidden in there somewhere." What I love about that is, just this week on the YouTube, I was talking with somebody on the YouTube, and what they said that they throw away most of their artwork. So they'll do a drawing and they'll throw it away, and they'll only keep like their really best ones. But what I do is I just keep everything, and I'm a little bit, sometimes I wish I could throw things away. But then I also feel like it's really good to keep stuff, because the amount of times I've looked at my old drawings, especially the ones that at the time I thought was rubbish, you look at it and it actually inspires you, because you see how much you've grown. So like looking back at your old stuff, it can inspire you, because you can see how much better you're getting. But also sometimes you'll look at it and you'll think, the reason that's not very good is because I wasn't quite good enough. So what you can do is you can redraw it, and you can do it much better now because you've got better skills. So it's almost like your old stuff, it can inspire you and motivate you in the future, which I think is quite cool. But I like this because he's talking about in the little scribbles. So these little scribbles, which they're just scribbles, everything you're doing, it could turn into something beautiful. It just depends really whether you want to take that scribble further. So I thought that was quite cool. So this week's little inspirational quote: "It can be useful to look back at those warm-up scribbles. There might be ideas hidden in there somewhere." Brynn Metheney.